Hello, everyone, and welcome to CTL's Education Professional Development Series. My name is Anna Roach, Sales Partner and Operations Support here at CTL. I'm also joined by Mike Mahaney, CMO, and Stephanie Shea, Marketing Manager. For those of you who are not familiar with CTL, we are headquartered in Portland, Oregon, and have been providing innovative IT solutions to education and government customers for over 26 years. Some of our most popular products include our brands of ruggedized CTL and to-go PC laptops, convertibles, two-in-ones, and tablets designed specifically for K-12 education. Over the last 2.5 years, we've worked with Google to introduce a line of CTL Chromebooks that have been recommended by PC Magazine as the best choice for Chromebooks in education. As part of our commitment to education, CTL is offering monthly professional development webinars for our education customers. These webinars will include a variety of topics relevant to K-12 EdTech, but will have a big focus on Google Apps for Education and Chromebooks in the classroom. Today's webinar, Google Drive Tips and Organization, presented by Catherine Leveque of our professional development partner, Education Service District 112 of Vancouver, Washington. However, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the Attendee Interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select Telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to take two brief polls. With our first poll, we'd like to know what type of devices your organization is using: Chromebooks, Windows devices, Macs, or a combination of devices. Great, thank you. It looks like 20% are using Chromebooks, 40% are using Windows devices, 13% are using Mac, and 53% are using a combination of devices. Secondly, we'd like to find out the number of devices used in your organization. Please indicate whether you have 0 to 100 devices, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, or more than 1,000. Great, thank you. it looks like 15% is using 0 to 50, 54% is using 100 to 500, 8% is using 500 to 1,000, and 23 is using 1,000 plus. I would now like to introduce Catherine Leveque of our Professional Development Partner, Education Service District 112 of Vancouver, Washington. Catherine is a Google Certified Trainer and Google Certified Administrator and will take you through an overview of Google Drive.
Hi everybody, good morning, or whatever time it is where you're at. Let me get you on the right screen here. Hopefully I will have you seeing what I'm seeing. Alrighty, so hopefully that's the right slide there. Good morning. Before we start, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about what I do so you know where I'm coming from. I work at ESD 112, which is an education service agency, and we provide services to districts around our region here in Southwest Washington State. And I have about 15 years of classroom experience. 11 of that was as a resource room special education teacher. So I look at these tools from the perspective of how they can help differentiate education for our students in our class, and how they can kind of smooth out our workflow as teachers, because we're all pretty overworked no matter what kind of position we have. So that's what I do, and I go out to districts around my region and I do technology integration coaching, and I do a lot of training on the Google tools. And one of the things I do is start at the very beginning for districts that are adopting Google Drive, and I also come in sometimes after districts have been using the Google apps for a while and they didn't really get a lot of training right at the beginning, and so I kind of fill in those gaps. What we're going to be talking about today is a pretty basic level, and we're going to be speaking on a basic level about what Google Drive is, how it works, and a few tips for how to organize it so it can work for you. So if you're brand new to Google Drive, this should be pretty informative for you. And if you have been using it for a while, I hope there will still be a few little gems for you that you can take away and learn a few new things during this presentation. And of course, you guys can submit questions and we'll review those at the end, and hopefully I can help you out. So starting at the beginning, what is Google Drive? And a lot of people have heard of it and they kind of know what it does, but they're not sure. Some of them have been using something similar. Some of them have never ventured into this kind of cloud-based space, and we'll talk about what that means. Google Drive is basically a place to store your stuff. You can keep files there of any sort, and it's also the home for all your Google Apps files, so anything that you create in Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Forms, anything like that is going to live here in your Drive. And a lot of people were taught to access their Google Docs starting from the Docs homepage or from one of the apps homepages. And if you don't know what that is, that's fine, because I like to talk about this from Drive being the home base anyway. Drive is where all your files live, no matter what type they are. And it is a cloud-based service. And a lot of people kind of think they know what cloud-based means, and then when they kind of try to define it, they're not able to. So I usually start right at the beginning with this one. Cloud-based just means that your data, all your stuff, is living on a server. It's not living on your local machine. And while that is a little bit scary to some of us, especially if we have been doing computer stuff for a while, we want control over our data, and we're like, where is it? It's out there somewhere. That's freaking me out. But the cool thing about this cloud-based service means that I can access my files from almost anywhere, anywhere that I have an internet connection, and I can access it from nearly any kind of device I would like to. So this slide presentation that you're seeing right now, I can access from my phone, I can access from my iPad, my computer, the other desktop computer across the room. I can go to the library. As long as I log into my Google Apps account, my stuff will be there no matter where I am. And that is a really kind of a fun thing, especially for teachers who have been lugging home crates full of papers to grade for years. I'm sure some of you feel me on that one. That was one of my least favorite parts of being in the classroom, is hauling these giant piles of papers home to correct, because of course I could never get them done during my prep time if I had any. So when you start moving towards doing more assignments digitally, and you find out you don't even have to carry a laptop back and forth, you just can use your work computer at work and your home computer at home, that's a pretty magical thing. So I try to emphasize the convenience of that because it's one of the things that makes people willing to try new stuff with Google Apps. So when you get into your Google Drive, and that's just drive.google.com, there are a variety of ways to get there. And I'm going to switch to another window here and hope that it's actually showing you the right thing. When I get into my Google Drive, I have a list of items in there. And if you're new to Google Drive, of course, you won't have this much stuff. I have a bazillion files in mine. I have some options for how to view it. One of the first things that you might see if you haven't changed anything is that it's in this kind of grid view or icon view, and you'll see kind of these big picture files. I prefer to keep mine in list view, and that's because I have a lot of stuff. And also, as you can see, I'm a little bit kind of OCD about how it's organized. I don't always organize everything right away, but I do like to make sure that I have everything color-coded and listed out in the order of frequency, which I like to use it in, and that's what works for me. Everyone's brain looks different, but I'll show you guys how you can kind of sort that out in a way that works for you. So when you are in your drive, you can sort by name, and you can sort that in either direction. Mine is as numbers first, so I've just sorted those to the bottom, and I usually leave them like this. I have some sort options right here. I can sort it by modification date as well. So if I want to just look at what's the last thing that was modified in this drive, and this, you can see it has a column for owner, because Google Drive and Google Apps are all about sharing and collaborating. Some of the stuff, excuse me, that is in my drive does not belong to me. It's stuff that's been shared. So this was shared by a colleague, and it's the last thing that was modified in my entire drive. So that's why it's filtering to the top here when I sort that way. Last modified by me would show the last file that I have worked on. And it starts with folders, and it goes down to other file types. And then last opened by me, which shows that this folder, which is the folder that has the presentation you've been looking at in, was the last modified or last opened by me. So I usually leave mine sorted this way, by name, and I have numbers on the fronts of my folder so that it'll stay exactly the way I want no matter what the name is. Not everybody does that, but that is one of the options that you have. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the features of Google Drive that you can see. You have filters, and you have sidebars, and you have folders, and it's a little confusing as to which is which sometimes. So when you're viewing Drive, and you can see it in the little screenshot on this window, the folders show up in the sidebar where it says My Drive, and they show up in this main window. Okay, so you saw all the bazillion folders in My Drive. You can have as many or as few as you like, and that's completely up to you. Some people organize their folders by semester or by year, then by semester or quarter or grading period, and then by class period or subject, and then even further down you can go by assignment, by unit, by student, however you like. For me, when I was a teacher, I just had folders for each subject. I taught mostly middle school, so I would have a subject area folder, and then I would have units within that and any relevant materials within there organized however made sense to me. Your folders show up in this My Drive folder when you turn this little triangle down, and it's the same thing you're going to be seeing over here in the folder view. These things on the left side that are gray, those are filters. They look like folders to people sometimes because they're sitting there under the My Drive folders, but they're really just a different way of viewing the stuff that's in your drive, and I'll demonstrate that for you in just a sec. And then you also have sidebars, where sometimes we will have some information that opens up in the right-hand sidebar, and I'll show you how that's how that's a little bit different. So we're going to go to the drive again. Oops, my drive is not cooperating with me. There we go. So when I click on an item in my drive, I have some different things that will happen, and we'll go through the changes that occur and the options you have based on what you're clicked on. But you can see I have my folders here, my filters down the side, okay, and here's my drive right here. If I open that up, all these folders are showing up here. And in this view, I can even see folders that are nested within other folders. I have a lot of stuff going on here. It's kind of scary. I'm not sure I even want to look at it right now because there's a lot to do, but a lot that's already been done too. Below here, these are filter views. So if I want to see only files that have been shared with me, and that is things that are owned by others but then were shared with me, this is where I would look. And this is useful to me if I go, well, I know that somebody shared something with me. I can't remember exactly when or what it was called, but I know it was shared by Dina. So then I can go shared with me and find the last thing that Dina shared with me and go, oh, there it is. So that's kind of a handy filter. Excuse me. And things that are shared with me are not automatically going to show up anywhere else in my drive except for the shared with me filter. So you can see when I click on this, I get this little add to my drive button. And if I do that, that'll put that into the main top level part of my drive, and then I can drag it or move it into any folder I want to keep it organized. Now, because this is a filter and not a folder, I'm not moving it for Dina when I move it. If I move it in, if I add this to my drive, it'll show up in my drive, and I can say organize, and it'll tell me I can move it anywhere I want. So let's say I want to move it into my demo files folder. That doesn't affect anything that Dina sees. It tells me that it's moved it for me, but it's not moving it for her. So you don't need to worry that you are undoing someone else's organization by increasing your organization. So there it is in the folder that I moved it to. I could also have dragged it and dropped it. So there's my shared with me filter. The Google Photos filter really confuses people sometimes. This is not every photo or image that you have in your Google Drive. It is photos that have been uploaded to your Google Plus profile, which you may or may not have activated or may not be available to you as a school district employee, because each district has a different philosophy on that. So in case you haven't seen it, let me just quickly tell you what that means. Google Plus is a social media platform that Google created. In some ways, it looks a little bit like Facebook. In my experience, it has a much better signal-to-noise ratio for as far as just there's fewer people on it, and many of them are using it for business reasons. So I encourage teachers to use it if they can as a professional development platform and as a PLC, a professional learning community for themselves. And I teach people how to make communities there. You can make a community that is local to your school, your district, or all the English teachers in your state, or whatever works. So without going too far into that, just know that those photos that are appearing in your Google Plus profile, it would be just like uploading a photo to Facebook. If you uploaded a photo to Google Plus, it'll show up here. I have lots of other images in my drive, but they don't show up in this filter. Another thing, just really quickly to be aware of, and this is kind of a sideline, but I always feel like I should mention it. If you have an Android phone, there is a way, and I don't think it's default, fortunately, but there is a way to sync every photo you take with that phone to your Google Photos, that may be problematic if you're signed in with your work account and there are photos that you don't want associated with your work account that are on your phone. I don't know about you, but I think most people probably have some of those, so it's just something to be aware of. Do be careful when letting Google sync all the things to a work account. So that's what the Google Photos filter is about. Recent. Recent is my friend because it shows me exactly what it sounds like it shows me. It shows me what I've recently looked at and viewed. So if I am thinking to myself, as I frequently am, what was that thing I was just working on? I don't remember what I named it or where I put it, but I know I just worked on it yesterday. I can find it right in here. So that's pretty handy. And as you can see, even something that I've opened recently that doesn't belong to me, I can see in this filter. The starred filter is a handy one for quick access to things you're using frequently. Now, I confess that I am a star abuser. There are way too many things in this filter. There's just no reason for there to be this many things. So the idea of a starred folder is that something I'm working on a lot or that is relevant to me right now, I can go in and add a star to it. So let's say I needed this file, and I'll show you guys how I'm getting these contextual menus. I would add a star. And that means I don't have to go dive into these folders to find it. If I hit starred, that's going to show up in there eventually. And you see how it's way at the bottom because I just have too many things starred. So the thing about stars is if everything is starred, then nothing is really super important. And I only want things that are really important to show up in my starred view. So I have to be sure that I remove stars from things that I'm not working on all the time. So don't be a star abuser like me, but do understand that stars are to just help you pull things to the forefront if you're working on them frequently or they're very important. And if you use them properly, they can be pretty handy when you have a lot of stuff in your drive. And here's my trash, which, as you can guess, is just the trash. You don't really have to delete anything out of here because you have pretty much unlimited storage as an education customer. But you can get rid of things out of here if it's driving you crazy. I kind of leave things alone. There's also a way, of course, to restore them. If I decide that I want these out of here, I can get them back into my drive. So as I click on this folder, I can either restore it back to my drive or I can totally get rid of it. So if it's driving you crazy that you have stuff in your trash, click on it, delete forever, it's gone. So those are your filters down the left side. And I'm going to go back to my other little slide here for a second, if I can. We're going to talk about sidebars and contextual buttons. And so in your drive, you have changeable buttons that, depending on the item you've clicked on, different items have different options, and you're going to see different things when you click on those different items. So as we go through this in Drive, sorry, I hope I'm not making anyone car sick because my little button there likes to flip me back and forth between windows a few times every time I click it. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I'm going to blame the GoToWebinar software for that. When you're in Drive, depending on what you're clicking on, you will see different options. So if you kind of watch up here, you might see some different options. Things change around depending on what I'm clicking on. And if I'm here in Shared with Me, I get different options depending on whether things have been added to my drive or not. So we're going to talk a little bit about these contextual buttons. So in your drive, basically everything that's in your drive is a web page, which is kind of weird to think about, but it's also the way that we're able to share things so flexibly. with Google Drive and Google Apps. So if I want to share this course development folder, I have a couple of things that I can do. I've clicked on it, so I see my options here. I can get the link, and that gives me the option to just copy this, paste it in an email, do whatever I would like to do with it. This particular folder is only shared with a few people. I would have to access my sharing settings to make it more widely accessible if I wanted to share it with everybody. But that's kind of a separate item that you set for each item in your drive. If I want to share it with specific people, this is where my sharing settings come up. I click that little plus person, and I can put the names of individual people in my organization here. Depending on the settings for your district, you can also share with people outside of your district if that's permitted. And I can also decide what kind of access the people I'm sharing with have. Do I want them to be able to edit it or just view it? And with any kind of Google document or Google Drive file, you have to think about two things. Who are you sharing with, and what can they do to it? So it's really good to always get in the habit of not just typing that email address in, but also clicking this little button and thinking exactly about what you would like them to be able to do to that folder, that file. And when I share a folder, by default, everything within the folder is shared at the same level with the same people. So if I give edit access to this folder to you, and there are a lot of documents in it, then you will have edit access to all those documents too. So use caution is what I'm saying, especially with folders. I have a choice to notify and send a little email via your Gmail to you if I'm sharing with you too. And I have some other little options down here depending on what I'm sharing. I also have the option to go ahead and trash this right from my drive. Not going to do that, but as we know, we can get it back out of there if we needed to. And then I have this little three dots. This is called the More Actions menu. I've heard some people call it the totem pole. I mean, whatever it is that helps you remember what it is, you go ahead and use that terminology, because contextual menu or More Actions menu is kind of an unwieldy term for some folks. So I have a bunch of other options that are just collapsed into this little guy here. Open with. There are apps that you can connect to your drive, and for instance, a specific type of PDF viewer. If you have PDF files in your drive and you'd like to be able to view and in some cases annotate or highlight or write over those PDFs, you can connect certain apps to Drive to do that. I can make a new folder from here. I can move this folder to somewhere else. Add a star, but I'm not going to do that because I already have too many starred files. I'm going to discipline myself here. And this is where I can change the color, and color coding obviously is pretty important to me. So that's where I change the color of my folders. If I need to change the name of it, I can do that from here. If I want to view the details, I click this little guy here, and this is where my other sidebar comes in. And this is my right-hand sidebar that tells me details about the file, tells me that nobody else has access to this. If I had this shared with other people, it would give me some idea of what access type, if it was shared with groups, individuals, how many people, and it tells me who owns it, when it was modified, when it was created, all that kind of good stuff. And I can add some descriptive text to it to help me search for it later, or to help me remember what it is, if excuse me, if I need to. And my activity tab here tells me what I have been doing to this. And this is showing, because I have a folder selected, this is showing me what I've moved and edited on the documents within this folder. I'm just going to close that. Now, you'll notice that some things are redundant. In my More Actions menu, I have this little eye that says View Details, my little info panel that we just looked at. But I also have that here. Okay, so some things are in more than one place, which is usually a good thing. You're going to find the one that works for you and remember where it is there, and that's the one that you'll use. I also have the option to download this entire folder. And Google Drive will look at the files that are inside that folder and convert them on the fly to an analogous format. So what usually happens is if I have Google Docs in here, they'll download as a Word format, so a .docx format. If I have spreadsheets in here, they'll download as a .xls, an Excel file. Images, I think, usually come down as a PNG file. PDFs come down as PDFs. So it just depends on what you have in your folder, but it will try to figure out a way that you can use that document just on your computer without opening with Google Drive. So you have an option to get things out of Google Drive after you have them in there, and we'll talk about how you import as well. So over here, I have my contextual buttons that change, and I also have, here's my grid to list view, which I showed you before, my options for sorting, and here I have some options for settings for Drive, and these are global settings, and these are very dependent on how your environment is set up by your district, so I'm not going to go too far into that, but just know that there are settings there, and if there is something you need to do globally to your whole drive, that's a place to take a look at. Another way that I can get at some of my options in Drive are to, let's see, find a document. To right-click or control-click, depending on what kind of computer, what kind of a mouse you're using. What I did was just control-click on that because I'm on a Mac, and I have some other options here. Because this is an individual document and not a folder, you can see the options are slightly different, just where that little panel shows up depending on whether I control-clicked or used my little 3 dots menu. Preview will give me the ability to just look at the file. When you see this dark screen with a document in the middle of it, that's your preview. And depending on the type of file, you have some options for opening it, doing some other things with it, downloading it, sharing it right from here. My More Actions menu even shows up in here while I'm previewing it. So if I don't know what I want to do with it, I can kind of open it up, take a look, decide if it needs to be starred or unstarred or moved. Let me go back to my little right-click menu here. That was my preview. Right here is my open with. I didn't even have to go into preview to get at that. I have some connected apps. You may not see the same list of apps when you look at this menu on a document in your drive because you, as a user, are going to choose what apps are connected, or your administrator who set up your domain is going to make that choice for you. So you might see some different stuff there, and that is totally fine. I can share this individual document from here. I got my little plus person, and you'll see it's the same panel that shows up. If I click Advanced, I have more options to see who all is shared, has seen this document, and what I can do with their permissions. I can get a link, I can move it, add the star, rename it, view details, which is going to pop that little right sidebar panel out again. I can make a copy of this file right from here, which is very handy. A lot of folks, excuse me, are used to the Save As feature, and because Google Apps saves automatically with most of its apps, you don't have that feature, so people are kind of stumped. They're like, well, what if I just want this copy for me, and I want to make sure it stays the same, but I want to make a new copy and share it with other people and have them edit it too? Well, that's how you do it. I could make a copy of this file, and it will go ahead and create that copy, and then I have the same options I had before. I can share it, I can star it, I can move it around, I can preview it to make sure it's the same stuff. So that's where your make a copy comes in handy. I can download this file, and it will download this as a docx file for Word, and I can trash it from here. So again, depending on what you're clicking on, you'll have different options, and I think when I go through these options with people, I feel like I'm kind of going through a list of stuff, but in my experience, sometimes people just have not dived in and kind of investigated what's there, and these are the little things that can help you so much with your organization, your workflow, and your efficiency. knowing that I can make a copy right from here by right-clicking instead of opening up this document and then making a copy this way, you know, or renaming it here, that can save me some time. So that's a pretty handy thing to know. So I hope there was some kind of a little gem in there that you were able to take from that. So you have a lot of options with your folders. And we talked a little bit about color coding, and you saw that I have my kind of weird personal system where I put numbers on because I don't want them alphabetized. I want them in order of importance to me, and then by alphabetical and with colors, and you know, that's just how my brain works, and everybody's brain works differently, but that's the great thing. You have a lot of options. That's kind of the beautiful thing about Google Apps, and also the scary thing. There's about 5 different ways to do everything, which is great, but can be a little confusing when you're first learning it. So, you know, be patient with yourself. Give yourself some time. If you're coming from a place where I have a lot of teachers that I work with that are like this, they have had a PC for a dozen years, and it's had folders and folders and folders, and they have it just so, and it's first semester, unit 1, assignment 1 folder, and then all the stuff is in there, and they want it just like that in their Google Drive. And it may be that that's exactly what you're going to want to recreate when you move your stuff to Google Drive, but I would encourage you to be open to the idea that you might find a way that works better, because this is a new tool, and because we use it in different ways, because we share things directly with students as well as with colleagues. Just kind of be open to the idea that you may be having things organized slightly differently. But almost everyone is going to need to have a hierarchical organization. By that I mean folders within folders. So big idea, smaller idea, smaller idea. Something that you should know is that when you import things to your Google Drive, and you have a few choices with that of how to do that, you have a couple of things you kind of need to watch out for. I can drag and drop files right into this window, or I can upload an entire folder or a file. One of the problems that is still happening with Google Drive, and I know they're aware of it, and hopefully they're working on ways to fix it, is that if you have folders within folders within folders, and I've experienced this on both Mac and PC, and you're trying to import them to Google Drive, sometimes you will only get the top layer or two. So if I were importing, for instance, this DMC folder, I would get all of these folders that are in it. I'd get all this stuff. And maybe I would get like these folders, but everything inside here would be gone. So if you're importing a ton of stuff, you're going to want to be cautious, maybe try and get some help from someone who's experienced in importing things. And just really the only thing you need to do is make sure that you don't delete everything off your computer, especially not before you have ensured that everything is where it belongs, because that can be, excuse me, a bit of a problem. So just be aware of that. When you want to create new folders, you can do that from this new menu right here, and it will create it in the folder that you're currently sitting in. And you also have that option from your contextual menus or buttons. When you are clicking on an item in your drive and right-clicking, you can make a new folder right there. Your naming conventions, of course, can be whatever you want. It kind of defaults to sorting things alphabetically if you have it in list view. And even in grid view, it kind of maintains the organization that I have imposed on my drive. So it goes top to bottom, left to right. Okay. But for me, I have to have it in a list because it doesn't make a ton of sense to me otherwise. I'm sorry, that thing is just being really weird. A few other features that you should know about, kind of alluded to this before, that there are apps that you can connect to Drive. And these are third-party apps. Some of them are actually made by Google, but they're additional to what is default for Drive. And some of them are made by third-party developers. And to use those, you have to go to the Chrome Web Store. You can usually find that from your apps menu, your little Rubik's Cube. Or if you just Google Chrome Web Store, the first link will be that, and you can go straight there. These are Google tools. There is no shame in Googling for them. It's totally fine. Go right ahead and do that. The Chrome Web Store has all kinds of stuff. I mean, they have a little feature here. It's New Year's, so everybody's tracking their exercise. You can have apps connected to Drive that do that. No Red Ink helps teachers who teach English or who are teaching writing work on grammar and writing skills. A lot of these are education, but they're not exclusively education. You may have a collection that your admin has put up top for you. Actively Learn, some of you guys might have heard of that. Here is a PDF viewer. There's just a ton of different things in here. 3D Anatomy, I know a lot of science teachers who really like that one. So I encourage you to go kind of play around with this. Something to be aware of is that some of the apps you connect will just be links out to websites, and some of them will actually have an effect on files in your Drive. For instance, this PDF viewer will actually give you an option to open with Lumen PDF and give you the functions of Lumen PDF while you're working on a PDF in your Drive. So you can go in here and search for anything that you would like to look for. The sky's the limit. There's a ton of stuff in here. There are reviews on every item, so I personally like to read reviews before I download anything. And yes, there are games in here, so if your kids have access to this, you're going to want to do some digital citizenship discussions about what we focus our time on during school hours. Sometimes those are blocked by your district, sometimes not, so it's always just good to be aware that they're there. And they do have a games filter, so if you just want to look at games. Extensions are different from apps in that they change the functionality of the Chrome browser itself. So that's kind of a different discussion. But just to be aware that those are there so that you can connect apps to Drive and change the way you interact with some of those files. One of the things that they help you with is to preview or open non-Google file types in a different way than Google would normally do it. One cool little trick that a lot of people don't know about is that you can do OCR from a picture, and what that means is optical character recognition. So if you've ever had someone hand you a piece of paper and you go, well, gosh, I wish that they had emailed me that or sent it to me, shared it with me in my Google Drive because I would like to have that text be editable or usable to me in other ways. There is a little bit of hope if you have a picture in your Drive. So if I take a picture of that piece of paper that someone sent me and I select it in my Drive and do my preview and open it with Docs, it will actually recognize the text in the picture and convert it to text. And it does a pretty darn good job of it. If you've ever used an OCR application with a scanner, you know that it's not always 100% perfect. But Google Apps is using that same kind of technology. So just kind of a neat little trick that you might want to know about. And if you don't remember anything else about this, just remember that when you right-click and preview, you can open a picture with Docs, not just photo viewing applications, and then you'll see what happens. So if there's any text in your picture, it will actually convert it to a document with text for you to manipulate. Kind of a fun little feature. There are a lot of keyboard shortcuts that can help you out in Drive, and there are so many that I'm not going to bother trying to go through them all because you will not remember. They also vary based on your type of hardware you're using to access it. Chromebooks have their own keyboard shortcuts, but there is a list of them, and when you get your follow-up after this session, there should be some links here to the Google help file that actually tells you all the shortcuts, and sometimes that can be a really handy thing. Some people are mouse clickers and some people are button pushers, and if you're a button pusher, this will really make you a happy camper because it'll give you some options for doing some new stuff a little quicker with your drive. So just to be aware that that is there. And I hope that there was some little nugget of something new in there for you. I know people have probably been submitting questions the whole time, so I am happy to take questions now if you guys would like to ask.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I've been watching a couple things come in. The first one is from Stan, and he says, if someone shares a file with you and that person leaves the district and their Google Apps account is deleted, will you still have access to the shared file?
Well, most of the time, yes. It's quite possible that you can. That is something that's dependent on your administrator, so the person who is in charge of all your Google stuff. Basically, the person who you would call and say, hey, I forgot my password and need to reset your password. That's the person that I'm talking about when I say your administrator. And they make a choice when someone leaves the district of how they deal with that person's files. And the way that the administrative console is built for Google, you have a choice to just go ahead and delete everything, or to retain it, or to reassign the ownership of those files to another user. And I would say in the vast majority of cases, because we do have government regulations that say we have to retain documents for a certain amount of time, they're not going to be deleted right away, but their ownership may be switched to someone else. That should not affect your ability to see that file if it was shared with you. It might, but it shouldn't. So if you have a file that was shared with you from someone and you know they left the district and all of a sudden you can't find it, you could check with your Google admin and say, hey, this was shared with me. Can you find who owns it now and see if I can get access to it? And they should more than likely be able to make sure you still have access.
Okay, great. Okay, we have another question coming in from Glenn, and he says, do you have any way to map a Google Drive like a network drive with a drive letter?
Well, it depends on the platform you're using. There's a couple of things you can do, and it also depends on how admins want to run things. There is a Drive Sync application, which is an app you can download from Google for Mac or PC, and it syncs the files in your Google Drive to a folder on your hard drive. Obviously, this is not something we want people doing on Chromebooks because Chromebooks are not meant to have a ton of storage. On my MacBook that I'm using right now, I have a Google Drive folder, and I have the sync application syncing everything so that if I'm offline, I can then access things from a folder just like it was a mapped drive in my, or a mapped folder in my hard drive. So yes, it is possible. It just depends on your platform and on what your admin has set up.
Okay, great. Glenn also kind of had a comment. He was talking about moving files and was suggesting that you wouldn't want to move something from a network drive directly to Google Drive. He suggests copy to desktop first and then move it to the cloud.
That's probably not a bad idea. Again, it's all dependent on your setup. And when I do these presentations, I know I'm talking to people who are on Macs, on PCs, on all kinds of different. If you have your whole district on, for instance, a thin client system where they have nothing local to their desktop already, you don't necessarily have that choice, and sometimes files are moved for them. But yeah, sometimes that's a good idea. I just recommend that people just be careful before anything gets deleted. That's my general advice on that.
Okay. Actually, I have a question for you. There's not any other submitted ones at this point, but as you were giving your presentation, I was reminded about sharing, where sometimes I share a file with somebody, and then I'll receive an email that says they're asking for permission to access the file. But I thought I'd already shared it.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things that can happen. A lot of times, and this happens a lot with school districts and even happened with my organization, A lot of times your Google domain, which is the actual Google Apps, entity that you have, is not the same as your district. For instance, I work with the Longview School District in our region, and their Google domain is longviewschools.org, but their old web address kind of domain that they've had forever is longview.k12.wa.us, and they have email addresses associated with both. So if I share a file with someone at longview.k12.wa.us, it won't tell me I can't do that, but then if they click on it and they're not logged into their Google Apps account with that one, it'll ask it'll say you can request access, and whatever account you're logged into, it'll request access from that one. This also happens if they happen to be logged into their personal Gmail and you shared it with their business Google account.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you share something with me at esd112.org, and I'm actually logged into Chrome with my Gmail account, and I click on that link while that's my login, then it'll say, hey, do you want to ask her to share this with this account? So that could be what's happening there.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, another question came in from Kelly. When someone shares a document or folder with you, do you have to add it to your drive in order to edit it?
Not necessarily. That's really more of an organizational choice. You should be able to get at it and do whatever you want to do just from the Shared With Me filter. But as you can see with my Shared With Me folder, it was a zillion miles long. So if I didn't actually pull the things that I'm collaborating frequently on out of there and organize them into folders in my drive, I would have a hard time finding them. So it's dependent on how much stuff you got in there, really, if you choose to do that or not.
Okay. And then we just got another one from Lucia. When you make a copy of a shared file, is the copy that you made connected to the original? For example, if the owner of the original file deletes it, does it affect the copy?
It should not. Usually what it'll do, so if I own a file and I share it with you and you make a copy, there's a little checkbox that'll say share it with the same people, and that's not by default checked. If I make a copy, it's my copy, and I can do whatever I want with it, and it's not automatically shared, and so I have complete control. That's a good thing for what you're usually doing for work, but it's also just something to keep in mind. A lot of times people will want to share stuff publicly, but they'll think, well, I don't want anyone copying this or, quote, stealing it, and in this kind of collaborative environment, we have to readjust our thinking about how sharing works and what we're really doing. But still, you don't want someone to take your work and take credit for it. Just be aware that even if you have it view only, that doesn't stop people from making a copy and then doing whatever they want with it. Okay, and that's true anywhere on the internet, really. And there is an extra little checkbox of information that says prevent editors from adding new people, and there's some extent that you can say disable the copy feature, but you can't really necessarily keep them from doing that 100%. It just makes it a little harder for them. So just to be aware of that.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think that addressed everybody's question. I'm not seeing anything else come in at this time.
Awesome.
Oh, wait, something just came in, again, from Lucia. I have noticed that sometimes the Add to Drive button in Shared With Me doesn't appear again when I select the same file.
If it's already added to your drive, it should not appear again. So sometimes there are times when I think it should appear and then I go, oh wait, I did add it to my drive. Sometimes because I didn't click that button, I forget that I added it, but I actually dragged it somewhere and dropped it into another file, which will add it to my drive as well. So that could be what's happening.
Okay. Let's see. And she said, even if I haven't added it. Yeah, I think you addressed that.
Yeah, and as far as I know, that should only happen if you've added it, but there are times when I've added and forgot that I did. And it's possible that there is something wacky going on, but I wouldn't be able to speculate on what that was.
Sure. Okay. Oh, and then Lucia says thanks. So great. So I think that wraps up this section. We had some great questions today, and I think we'll just close the presentation. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Google Drive Tips and Organization. If you have any other questions, please contact Anna Roach at aroach@ctl.net. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of CTL and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.